Alien girl pulls human through a breached wall, but human sees the ruins reveal her crest. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The air trembled before Ethan Ward even understood why. A low hum, like metal breathing, rippled through the research outpost just seconds before the outer corridor buckled. Dust drifted from the ceiling panels, fine as flour, coating his gloves as his handheld scanner flickered to zero. He'd come here to repair a faulty field stabilizer, not to stand in a hallway listening to walls complain under pressure. But the readings were wrong. The floor plates warm under his boots, the faint scent of overheated circuits sliding against the cold concrete smell of the outpost. Then the breach hit. A white flash. A pressure wave. A hole ripped through the far wall as if the concrete had been peeled back by invisible fingers. Ethan barely had time to register the cold night air blasting in, sharp, dry, and smelling faintly of iron, before a shadow burst through the haze. A tall figure. Smooth, violet-tinted skin. Silver-white hair whipping like strands of light. She moved fast, impossibly fast, grabbing Ethan's forearm with a grip that felt both strong and strangely gentle. "Move," she ordered, her voice low and steady despite the chaos. She pulled him across the fractured threshold just as the overhead panels sagged. Ethan stumbled after her, his ears ringing, HUD glitching from the shock. He caught the glint of something metallic strapped across her back, half hidden beneath a worn cloak. Not a weapon, at least not one he recognized, but something shaped like a folded emblem. She kept them close to the wall, guiding him through drifting dust illuminated by emergency lights pulsing a soft red. The hallway beyond the breach felt colder, as if the outpost itself had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Ethan tried to speak, but she raised a hand, signaling silence. Her eyes, bright, reflective, almost metallic themselves, scanned the shadows ahead. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't even tense. She was calculating. A comm center in the middle of a broken structure. Ethan swallowed, grounding himself in the feel of her fingers still wrapped around his wrist. Warm, steady, real. His pulse slowed enough for him to hear the distant hum of the stabilizer core somewhere deeper in the outpost. The breach had destabilized more than just a wall. Whatever had caused it wasn't finished. She finally released him, her hand lingering for half a second, as though making sure he could stand on his own. He managed a breath. She nodded once, a silent acknowledgement before turning her gaze back toward the fractured corridor they'd escaped. Her cloak shifted with the motion, and for a heartbeat Ethan glimpsed a sliver of polished metal beneath it, smooth curves, engraved lines, glinting like starlight. Something important. Something she hadn't meant for him to see yet. But the ruins would eventually reveal everything. The dust settled just enough for Ethan to see the faint shimmer around the alien girl's shoulders as she stepped ahead of him, her movements smooth and controlled despite the fractured ground beneath their boots. The emergency lights flickered along the corridor, casting long shadows that stretched and curled like they were alive. Ethan adjusted the cracked display on his wrist device, trying to pull up a schematic of the outpost, but static filled the screen. The breach had scrambled half the systems. She glanced back at him, her silver-white hair catching the light like thin threads of frost. "Stay close," she said, not unkindly, simply stating a fact as solid as the concrete around them. Her voice had a calm steadiness that cut through the haze in his mind. Ethan nodded, noticing the way she studied every surface, every open vent, every flicker of movement. She was trained, not just agile or fast. Trained. They passed through a narrow service hall where the temperature dropped sharply. Ethan exhaled, watching his breath fog in the air. The girl noticed and reached out to adjust a small dial on his suit's collar, warming the inner lining. It surprised him, the quiet practicality of it, the small act of making sure he stayed warm enough to keep moving. "Thank you," he murmured. She did not answer, but her eyes softened for half a second before she turned forward again. A soft rumble passed through the floor. Plates, making the corridor vibrate. Something far beneath them was struggling to stay online. Ethan recognized the sound instantly. The stabilizer core, he whispered. If it fails, the whole outpost will. She lifted a hand gently, stopping him before the sentence finished. I know, she said. That is why we keep moving. Her cloak shifted again as she moved, and Ethan caught another glimpse of the polished emblem beneath. Curved metal lines, etched with symbols he did not recognize. It felt old, older than the outpost, older than anything that belonged here. He looked away before she noticed. They reached a junction where the ceiling had partially collapsed, leaving only a narrow gap under a leaning support beam. Dust floated in thin ribbons through the cold air. She dropped to a knee to inspect it, brushing her hand along the concrete. You can fit, she said, looking up at him. It will be tight, but it is stable enough. Ethan crouched beside her, feeling the cold through the floor. What about you? She tilted her head, almost amused. If you can fit, I can fit. There was confidence in the statement, not pride, just simple truth. Ethan eased himself under the beam first, the concrete brushing his shoulders. The air smelled of metal and dust, the kind that stuck to the back of the throat. As he pulled himself through, he heard the fabric of her cloak slide against the ground behind him. When he emerged on the other side, he stood and offered her a hand without thinking. She paused, studying his extended palm like it was an unfamiliar tool. Then she placed her hand in his, light and steady, and let him help her up. Her fingers were warm despite the cold corridor. For a moment, neither of them moved. The outpost hummed around them, lights flickering again as the core struggled. She released his hand slowly, her gaze flicking to the emblem hidden beneath her cloak before she pulled the fabric tighter. Ethan wondered what kind of Crest needed hiding in a place like this, and why someone with her skill was here at all. They kept moving, their footsteps echoing softly, two shadows navigating the broken spine of the outpost as the deeper rumble grew just slightly louder, warning them that time was running short. The corridor opened into a wider chamber where the ceiling arched. High above them, filled with suspended panels that swayed gently from the earlier shockwave. Thin trails of dust drifted downward like slow snowflakes, catching the dim red emergency lights in soft glimmers. Ethan paused just long enough to steady his breathing, the cold air brushing against the inside of his suit. His wrist device flickered again, momentarily displaying the stabilizer core's proximity before dissolving back into static. The alien girl stepped ahead of him, her movements nearly silent on the fractured floor. The cloak around her shoulders shifted with each step, hiding the crest he had glimpsed earlier. Ethan followed, noticing how she always kept a slight distance from any unstable structure, her path instinctive and precise, as if she had navigated places like this 1,000 times. What do you call this place? She asked without looking back, her voice soft enough to blend with the hum of the failing systems. Ethan cleared his throat. It is an auxiliary processing wing. Mostly research. Some maintenance. She nodded once, absorbing the information without question or doubt. She tapped a panel on the wall, but the display remained dark. Your systems are not responding. The breach scrambled everything, Ethan said. But if we can reach the core access point, we might stabilize power long enough to signal for assistance. She tilted her head slightly, considering him. You think you can repair it? Ethan hesitated. His training covered stabilizer diagnostics, not repairing one under these conditions. But there was no other option. I can try, he said. She accepted that answer with a single nod, then moved toward a section of the wall where several data conduits hung loose. She brushed her fingers lightly against them, sensing the faint energy still running through the lines. There is residual power here, she said. Your core is not completely lost. Ethan crouched beside her to inspect the conduits. The metal felt warm, like a living pulse beneath his palm. If the power is rerouted, he said, we could buy time. She watched his hands as he worked, her gaze steady, focused. He felt the weight of it even without meeting her eyes. Not judgment. Observation. She was trying to understand him. A soft vibration moved through the floor, causing the suspended panels above to sway more noticeably. Ethan looked up, tracking the subtle tremors. We should keep moving, he said. The structure is not stable. She rose smoothly, offering him her hand without a word. Her fingers curled around his with quiet strength as she helped him stand. Ethan felt the warmth through his glove, grounding him. They continued through the chamber, toward a narrow exit at the far wall. The air grew colder as they approached, carrying the faint scent of exposed wiring and coolant. A single emergency beacon blinked on the floor near the doorway, casting a faint amber ring around itself. She crouched to pick it up and handed it to him. "You will need the light," she said. He accepted it, watching the pulse of the beacon reflect in her eyes. "You know this kind of equipment?" She lifted her chin slightly. "I know what keeps people alive." It was not an answer to his question, but it told him something else. She had seen broken places before, and she had guided others through them. They stepped into the next hallway. The sound of their footsteps echoed in soft, rhythmic patterns, merging with the low hum rising from deep below the outpost. Ethan glanced at her once more, trying to piece together the parts of her she kept hidden. Her poise, her training, her quiet certainty, and the crest under her cloak, shining like a secret she was not ready to share. The further they walked, the more Ethan felt that whatever she was protecting was not just herself, and he wondered how long the ruins could keep her secret safe. The hallway narrowed until it felt more like a service spine than a proper corridor, the walls lined with insulated pipes that carried a faint warmth through the cold outpost. The emergency beacon in Ethan's hand cast a soft amber glow that danced across the metal surfaces, revealing thin scratches, dust prints, and the occasional flicker of condensation where the temperature shifted sharply. The alien girl walked just ahead of him, her silhouette steady and sure, her cloak brushing lightly against the wall with each measured step. Ethan noticed how she paused every so often, tilting her head as if listening to something deeper within the structure, something the outpost itself was whispering. He realized she was navigating not by the lights or the layout, but by the subtle pulse of energy that still trickled through the systems. "You can sense the power flow," Ethan said quietly, more observation than question. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she placed her palm against a panel, closing her eyes for a moment. The panel vibrated faintly under her touch. "Energy leaves traces," she finally said. "If you know how to listen." Ethan considered that, his breath visible in the cold air. "Your people must be highly trained in this kind of work." Her gaze flicked toward him, unreadable. "My people are trained in many things." The tone was gentle but firm, a reminder that her past was not something she offered freely. They moved deeper into the spine, where the hum of the stabilizer core grew more distinct. It was not loud, but it had a rhythm that seemed almost alive, like a heartbeat straining to stay steady. Ethan felt it through the soles of his boots, a faint vibration rolling through the floor. "We are close," he said, checking his wrist device again. The display steadied enough to show a rough map of their position, just beyond the next maintenance junction. She slowed her pace as they approached a circular hatch marked with faded warning paint. Several bolts were loose, and a thin line of condensate trickled down the metal. She brushed her fingers along the seam. "The pressure changed here recently," she said softly. The structure adjusted. Ethan crouched and inspected the pressure gauge beside the hatch. The needle trembled near the red line. "The stabilizer was hit harder than I thought." The alien girl leaned closer, her silver eyes reflecting the amber light of the beacon. "Can it be repaired?" Ethan looked at the gauge again. "If the main conduits are still intact, yes. If they are not, we can reroute, but it will take time." She nodded once, placing her hand flat against the metal. "Then we will find the main conduits." Ethan hesitated. "The inner tunnels are colder and less stable. Some may have shifted when the wall breached." She stepped back, her posture calm. "You help me cross the collapsed beam," she said. "I will help you cross whatever is ahead." He did not know why such a simple sentence steadied him as much as it did, but it did. He spun the hatch well slowly, careful not to force the weakened mechanism. The metal groaned in response, but the seal broke cleanly. A wave of cold air swept over them as the hatch cracked. "Open." Ethan lifted the beacon higher. The tunnel beyond stretched long and narrow, lit only by scattered blue guide lights embedded along the floor. A thin mist drifted through the air, swirling slowly as the temperature difference settled. She stepped in first, her boots silent on the metal grate. Ethan followed, sealing the hatch behind them. As the beacon's warm glow mingled with the cool blue of the guide lights, the tunnel seemed to breathe, exhaling a soft echo with each step they took. The hum of the stabilizer grew clearer, but under it, Ethan sensed something else, a quiet tension in the air, like the space itself was waiting for them. The alien girl walked beside him now, closer than before, her presence steady, her gaze forward. Whatever the ruins were hiding, they would face it together. The tunnel stretched ahead in a gentle curve, its blue guide lights fading into a soft haze that made distance difficult to judge. Ethan adjusted the emergency beacon in his hand, letting its warm glow fill the spaces the blue lights could not reach. The air felt colder here, carrying a crisp edge that hinted at deeper systems exposed by the breach. The alien girl walked beside him with quiet composure, her cloak brushing lightly against her legs, the fabric whispering with each step. Ethan stole a glance at her profile. Her eyes followed the lines of the tunnel with calm focus, as if the structure itself were speaking to her. It made sense. She had navigated effortlessly through places that should have been unfamiliar. She sensed things he could not. A subtle shift in her posture caught his attention. "What is it?" he asked. She lifted her chin slightly, listening. "The energy flow changes here," she said softly. "It dips, then rises again. Something is drawing from the core." Ethan frowned. A system might be struggling to stay online. She shook her head once. "No system draws energy in pulses like this. This is something else." He paused, considering her words. The outpost was mostly automated, maintained by remote systems that handled daily operations with minimal human support. Yet her tone carried certainty. He decided to trust that certainty. The tunnel widened into a circular junction, where a central column rose from floor to ceiling like a metallic pillar. Panels around its base flickered with faint blue light. The alien girl stepped closer, brushing her fingers near one of the panels without touching it. "There is warmth here," she said. Ethan knelt and placed his palm against the metal. She was right. The panel's surface was warm to the touch, a small pocket of heat in an otherwise cold tunnel. "This junction carries one of the main conduits," Ethan said. "It might tell us if the stabilizer is still intact." She nodded, her gaze following the conduit that disappeared into the ceiling. Ethan accessed the small manual screen beside the panel, tapping it gently. The first few taps returned only static. Then, slowly, the display steadied, showing a fluctuating diagram of the power grid. The conduit line blinked in uneven intervals. "There," Ethan said, pointing. "Power is being siphoned before reaching the stabilizer core." She leaned in, studying the diagram with an intensity that reminded him of someone deciphering a language only they could read. "We must reach the location where the power diverts," she said. "Not the core." Ethan agreed, zooming in on the diagram. "That path leads to the auxiliary reactor wing. It is colder there, and the floors may have shifted after the breach." She stepped back, her expression steady. "Then we will cross them." He met her gaze. "You make it sound simple." A faint hint of warmth touched her eyes. "Only movement is simple. What waits ahead is not." Before Ethan could reply, the floor beneath them vibrated in a long, low hum. Not enough to shake anything loose, but enough to let them know the stabilizer was weakening again. He tightened his grip on the beacon. "We should go before the conduit loses more energy." She moved first, stepping into the next corridor that branched to the right, following the path drawn by the blinking diagram. Ethan followed closely, matching her pace. As they walked, the blue guide lights gave way to dimmer white ones that flickered slowly, casting shifting shadows across the walls. The air grew colder still, brushing against his face like a winter draft. She noticed him shiver and adjusted the collar of his suit once more, pressing the warming control gently. Her expression softened almost imperceptibly. "It will not get warmer ahead," she said. "You must stay steady." Ethan nodded, feeling the warmth spread through the inner lining of his suit again. "Thank you," he said quietly. She turned her gaze forward. "It is what one does when they do not wish to walk alone." Her words lingered in the air between them, warm even in the cold corridor. They kept moving, side by side, deeper into the outpost's quiet heart, where the hum of the failing stabilizer waited like a distant echo calling them closer. The corridor narrowed again as they moved deeper into the auxiliary wing, the ceiling dropping low enough that Ethan had to duck slightly beneath a support beam. The air felt noticeably colder here, sharp enough that each breath he exhaled drifted in a pale mist before fading. The guide lights along the floor grew uneven, leaving pockets of dimness where only the soft amber glow from the beacon filled the space. The alien girl walked with steady certainty, her steps quiet, her posture composed despite the temperature drop. The edge of her cloak brushed against Ethan's arm when the passage tightened. He glanced at her, noticing how her skin seemed to catch even the faintest light, reflecting it with a soft metallic sheen. She lifted her hand slightly, motioning for him to slow. "Listen," she murmured. Ethan paused. At first he heard only the hum of the stabilizer core in the distance. Then he caught it, a faint rhythmic pulse, like soft footsteps or machinery trying to start and failing. "That sound," he whispered. "It is not part of the stabilizer." She shook her head. "It is the energy diversion. Something is drawing power repeatedly, but only in short bursts." Ethan tightened his grip on the beacon. "Then we are close." The tunnel branched into a split ahead, two narrow corridors leading in opposite directions. The alien girl knelt, placing her palm on the cold metal floor between the two paths. She closed her eyes for a moment, her features calm and focused. "The energy flows stronger to the left," she said. "Whatever is siphoning power is there." Ethan nodded and followed her as she moved into the left passage. This corridor sloped downward at a shallow angle, the walls lined with exposed wiring that hummed with faint static. Ethan could feel the temperature dropping even further as small crystals of frost formed on some of the pipes. He pressed a warming switch on his suit, but it only provided limited relief. She noticed. "Your body is sensitive to cold," she said gently. "Does this harm you?" "I will be fine," Ethan said. "But I am grateful you noticed." Her expression warmed slightly before she turned forward again. After several minutes of quiet movement, the corridor opened into a wider chamber. Frost lined the edges of the floor tiles, and a thin mist clung to the air near the ceiling. At the far end of the chamber, a series of conduits fed into a raised platform where a single cylindrical device emitted a soft, intermittent glow. Ethan recognized it immediately. "A regulator node," he said. "It is not supposed to activate on its own." The alien girl approached it slowly, her movements cautious but graceful. "It is pulling energy from the main conduit," she said. "But why?" Ethan stepped beside her, examining the device. The surface felt cold under his fingertips, colder than the surrounding air. "It is trying to reset itself," he said. "The breach must have triggered a safety loop." She tilted her head, watching the faint glow pulse again. "It is afraid," she murmured. Ethan blinked, surprised. "Machines do not feel fear." She glanced at him with calm certainty. "Machines do not feel, but structures respond. When something breaks, it looks for balance." Ethan considered that. The outpost had many layers of automated safeguards, most of them designed to prevent system failure. A regulator attempting to reconnect itself was not completely unheard of, but the intensity of the siphoning was unusual. She stepped closer, placing her hand near the conduit without touching it. "If this continues, your stabilizer core will lose too much energy," she said. "You will not be able to repair it in time." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Then we need to shut down the regulator." She turned to him. "How?" Ethan looked at the device again, running through possibilities in his mind. There should be a manual override panel beneath the platform, but it might be locked. She moved toward the platform, her steps deliberate, her cloak shifting around her legs. "Show me," she said. Ethan followed her, his breath visible in the cold air. As they approached the base of the platform, he felt a familiar vibration through the floor, the same pulse the alien girl had sensed earlier. The energy diversion was growing stronger. She crouched beside him, her eyes bright in the dim light. "If you can open the panel," she said softly, "I will hold the flow steady." Ethan met her gaze, struck by the quiet resolve in her voice. "You can do that." "I can try," she replied. "I do not wish to walk alone in this place." "I told you that." Something in the way she said it made the cold feel less sharp. They worked together in the silence of the frost-filled chamber, two figures surrounded by fading light and a hum of energy that felt as if the outpost itself was holding its breath, waiting for what they would do next. The cold deepened around them as if the chamber itself were exhaling frost, each breath from Ethan forming a pale cloud that drifted upward toward the dim ceiling. He knelt beside the platform, running his fingers along the edge until he found the recessed latch for the manual override panel. It was stiff from the temperature drop, the metal biting cold even through his gloves. The alien girl rested her hand above the conduit, her eyes half closed, focusing on the rhythm of the unstable energy flow. Her posture was steady, balanced, as though she had done this kind of work countless times before. "Tell me when you are ready," she said, her voice calm despite the rising pulse of the regulator. Ethan nodded, working the latch until it clicked and the small panel loosened. "Almost," he said. He braced his fingers under the edge and eased it open. A faint hiss of colder air escaped from inside, revealing a compact cluster of wires and crystalline fuses arranged around a small mechanical switch. The beacon in his other hand cast a warm ring of light across the components. "I see the override," Ethan murmured. "If I disconnect the top fuse, the device will shut down safely." She opened her eyes fully, watching him with quiet trust. "Do it," she said. Ethan reached inside, feeling the cold sting through his gloves. The regulator pulsed again, stronger this time, sending a faint vibration through the floor. The alien girl steadied herself, spreading her fingers slightly, as if holding invisible lines in place. A soft glow gathered near her palm, not bright, but enough to catch Ethan's attention. "You are doing something," he whispered. "Holding the current," she answered. "It will not stay steady for long." Ethan tightened his grip on the fuse. "I will be quick." He pulled upward gently, feeling resistance as the crystal loosened. The regulator gave another pulse, almost like a soft thrum of protest. The girl's eyes sharpened. "Ethan now." He pulled the fuse free. The pulse cut off instantly, the glow inside the regulator dimming to a soft, harmless blue. The hum of siphoned energy faded out, leaving only the distant heartbeat of the stabilizer core. The alien girl lowered her hand slowly, her shoulders relaxing as the chamber settled into stillness. Ethan exhaled, letting the tension leave his body. "It worked," he said. "The stabilizer should have enough power now." She stepped closer, her expression softening. "You did not hesitate," she said quietly. "Many would have waited too long." Ethan shook his head. "I just did what needed to be done." She studied him for a moment, as if weighing the meaning of his words. Then she turned toward the conduit line, her cloak shifting enough that the edge of the hidden crest glinted beneath it. Ethan saw it again, etched metal, curved and polished, catching the light like a sliver of a distant star. She noticed his gaze and pulled the cloak tighter, her expression unreadable. "We should return to the core access point," she said, her voice steady. "The structure will begin to recover now that the drain has stopped." Ethan nodded, rising. "The stabilizer might still need reinforcement, but we should have enough power to work with." As they stepped away from the platform, the floor vibrated gently beneath them, a softer and more natural pulse than before. The outpost was stabilizing, slowly exhaling after its long tension. The alien girl walked beside him, closer than before, her presence a quiet warmth against the cold tunnel air. Ethan glanced at her once, noting the calm in her stride despite the strain of holding the unstable energy moments earlier. "You handled that better than anyone I know," he said softly. She hesitated, a rare pause, then spoke with a quiet honesty that felt heavier than the cold air around them. "It is not something I am meant to do openly," she said. "But you were in danger. I did not wish for that." The words lingered, gentle but firm, carrying a kind of sincerity Ethan had not expected. They moved back into the dim corridor, guided by the soft glow of the beacon and the distant hum of the recovering outpost, unaware that the next turn would reveal more than either of them was prepared to face. The corridor widened as they moved closer to the stabilizer access point, the air growing warmer with each step as the systems slowly regained strength. The emergency beacon in Ethan's hand cast a soft amber halo on the walls, blending with the steadier glow of the restored guide lights that now pulsed in a slow, synchronized rhythm. It felt as though the outpost itself was settling, breathing easier after the regulator's strain had been lifted. The alien girl walked beside him in quiet focus, her gaze tracking the subtle shifts of light along the corridor. Ethan noticed how her posture had changed. She no longer carried the tense alertness he had seen earlier. Instead, there was a calm steadiness in her stride, as if she had accepted something within herself. They reached a landing where the floor dipped slightly, and Ethan slowed to ensure his footing. The alien girl stopped with him, her hand lifting gently toward his arm without touching. "The stabilizer core is close," she said. "I can feel the energy balance improving." Ethan nodded, scanning the junction ahead. "If the regulator is shut down completely, The core might be operating at normal levels by now. We may just need to recalibrate it. She tilted her head slightly. You speak of it as if it is familiar to you. Ethan let out a soft breath. I have repaired dozens of stabilizers, but never in a place like this. Never with someone like you. Her eyes met his. For a brief moment, the cold corridor seemed warmer. She looked away first, adjusting the edge of her cloak. The motion revealed a wider portion of her hidden crest. The metallic emblem glimmered in the light, a curved insignia engraved with interlocking lines and an ancient symbol at the center. Ethan's steps slowed. The symbol was unmistakable. He had seen it only once before, in a technical briefing about diplomatic protocols. That crest, Ethan said softly. I know it. She froze. The corridor hum faded into a thin thread of silence. Slowly, she turned toward him. You should not have seen it, she whispered. Ethan held up his hands gently. I am not asking who you are. I just know what that symbol means. Her cloak tightened around her shoulders, but the emblem had already revealed enough. Tell me, she said, her voice quiet but edged with something deeper. Ethan swallowed. It belongs to the Valora line, the ruling house of your star regions. Her breath softened, as if the last piece of a wall she had held up finally loosened. She did not confirm it with words, but she did not deny it either. Instead, she looked down the corridor, her expression caught between resignation and relief. I came here to remain unseen, she said. I did not expect the structure to fail. I did not expect someone to see me. Ethan stepped closer, careful not to intrude. I do not intend to tell anyone. Your secret is safe. She looked back at him, her silver eyes reflecting the amber glow of the beacon. Why? Ethan blinked. Because you saved me. Because you helped me. Because it is the right thing to do. Her gaze lingered on him as if searching for an angle, a trick, something false. But she found nothing. A slow exhale left her chest. Your people, she said softly, speak often of doing what is right. I did not believe it until now. Ethan shook his head gently. It is not all of us. Just some of us try. Her shoulders lowered, the tension draining from her posture. I am not only a traveler, she admitted. I was sent to observe your outpost, to understand your technology, to avoid being recognized. Ethan nodded. You succeeded. I had no idea. She gave him a faint, almost fragile smile. Yet you still walked beside me. Of course, he replied. You walked beside me too. The hum of the stabilizer core intensified ahead, a softer and more stable pulse. The outpost was aligning, systems returning to balance. She turned toward the sound. We must finish the repair, she said. Ethan matched her stride as they moved forward. And though neither spoke of it again, the corridor carried the weight of the truth now shared. The truth revealed not by words, but by the quiet flicker of a crest catching the light in a moment she had not planned. The stabilizer chamber opened before them like the quiet heart of the outpost, its circular walls lined with soft white lights that pulsed steadily as the system regained strength. The hum was no longer strained or uneven. It had settled into a gentle rhythm, warm and consistent, like a heartbeat relieved of pressure. Ethan approached the main console while the alien girl stood beside him, her cloak still pulled close, though the crest beneath it seemed to glow faintly each time she breathed. He placed his hand on the panel and felt the mild vibration of the stabilizer running through the metal. It is recovering, he said, watching the readout steady. Your help made this possible. She did not answer right away. Instead, she traced her gaze along the chamber, watching the soft lights ripple in a slow wave across the ceiling. For the first time since he had met her, her expression held something like peace. Your technology is more resilient than I expected, she said quietly. Ethan smiled. With a lot of luck and a little instinct, anything can work. She tilted her head slightly, considering the idea. Instinct, she repeated softly, as if testing the word. Then she stepped closer to the console, her voice lower. When I first saw the breach, I thought you would run. Ethan let out a breath. I thought about it, he admitted. But I could not just leave you there. Her silver eyes lifted to him, faintly luminous in the soft chamber light. You did not know me, she said. You did not know what I am. I did not need to. Ethan replied gently. Someone needed help. That was enough. Her gaze softened, and she turned toward the stabilizer core as it pulsed once, brighter than before, sending a warm ripple through the chamber. The outpost had found its balance again. They stood in stillness, letting the quiet settle. Then she inhaled and slid the cloak from her shoulder, just enough to reveal the crest fully. The emblem caught the chamber lights, scattering soft reflections across her skin. The symbol was unmistakable now, curved lines intertwined around a central star, delicate yet commanding. Ethan looked at it with calm respect, not awe. "You truly are Valora," he said gently. She nodded once. "I am." There was no weight of arrogance in her voice, only quiet truth. Ethan straightened slightly. "If you wish, I can forget I saw it." She studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she spoke, her voice softer than he had heard it before. "You already know," she said. "But you did not change when you saw it." Ethan shook his head. "Why would I?" She looked down at the crest as though it were something fragile rather than something revered. "Most people treat me differently," she said. "Some with fear, some with admiration. But no one looks at me the way you do." Ethan felt the air shift around them, not colder or warmer, just deeper. "I see the person who walked these tunnels with me," he said softly. "Not the crest." Her breath caught, almost imperceptibly, but enough that he noticed. She stepped closer, the distance between them narrowing until he could see the faint shimmer of her skin in the chamber light. "Ethan," she said, his name warm in her voice. "There are few who would say such words to someone like me." He met her gaze without hesitation. Maybe there should be more. The hum of the stabilizer deepened, a final gentle pulse marking the system's full recovery. She looked at the console, then at him. "Your outpost is safe now," she said. Ethan nodded. "We did it together." She held his gaze, a quiet tenderness moving through her expression. "When the wall breached," she said, "I did not know who you were. But I knew I could not leave you." Ethan smiled. "Then we saved each other." Silence wrapped around them, warm and meaningful. She drew the cloak back over the crest, hiding the emblem once more, but not with secrecy, more with acceptance. Ethan turned toward the exit corridor, but before he could take a step, she laid a hand gently on his arm. He looked back. Her eyes held a soft glow, reflective as starlight. "Ethan," she said quietly, "whatever tomorrow brings, you saw me. Not the title, not the crest, just me." He nodded once, the moment anchoring itself between them like a promise. Together, they walked out of the stabilizer chamber, the soft lights fading behind them as they stepped into the restored corridor. And in the quiet space between their footsteps, something unspoken lingered. Something fragile, something real, something only shared by two people who had crossed ruins and secrets and found each other in the middle of both.